Welcome to the Second Bite Podcast, where we talk with top entrepreneurs and CEOs about creating valuable companies through creative transactions. Now, let's get started with the show.
Welcome back to the Second Bite Podcast. Felix Laboy is with me today. I'm very excited about it. And as you listen to this episode, you will understand why. Felix, it is great to have you here with us.
Hey, Todd, nice to be with you today. It's a beautiful day.
You know, I'll tell you why I'm so excited, because on the Second Bite Podcast, as you know, we talk to a lot of people that have done a transaction in their business and they're now working on their second bite. Your second bite was years and years and years ago, and you've gone on to some really exciting stuff, which we're going to dig into. But you went into what I would call the great beyond without any certainty about what that great beyond would be like. And from everything on your LinkedIn profile, it's been exciting and interesting and rewarding and all those things. So I'm really glad that you joined us. What I'd like to do is just put a couple things in context. And if we quickly rewind back, maybe it's 8 or 10 or 12 years ago, you had a company called eSite that was an early digital marketing business that you sold to a large strategic. Can you just talk about that, put it in context a little bit, and maybe talk a little bit about why, as a young man, you actually sold that business and what life was like after?
Sure, Todd. So I started a company. I was co-founder of a company called eSite Marketing. So it was 1999, back in the sort of stone age of all things digital. And we were focusing primarily on hotels and resorts around the world, helping them translate, digital marketing. Hotels are not the most technology facing folks. And so we were helping them with that new transition into the internet and to the digital world.
Just so people could find the hotel that I want to go to in Bethesda, Maryland online if I have a thing online.
Exactly. Literally creating websites, the first websites that hotels, and especially independent hotels, were promoting. The words, they didn't understand what search engine optimization was. They didn't think that people would spend $1,000 a night on a booking something online. I literally was told that. And so that was back in 1999. Fast forward 2007, we were happy. We were doing great. The company was doing very well. We were really enjoying what we were doing. And all of a sudden, I think the industry realized, oh, wow, I don't have this digital marketing expertise in my portfolio. And so we were very fortunate. We had 3 offers unsolicited to acquire the company, 2 large companies, and then a private equity firm. And honestly, Todd, I wasn't really looking to sell, right? But
you built it in the very, very early days. How long had you built it for, and how big was it? How many employees?
Yeah, so we started in 1999. We sold in 2007. Over 100 employees. Just working with hotels all around the world. We're having fun, right?
You were having a lot of fun, but so let me ask this: when I'm sure people are looking in saying, "Wow, this is a fantastic business." When you and your partner looked at the business, was it fantastic, or were there you were barely keeping it together, and you felt that entrepreneurial weakness because there were so many areas you still wanted to improve upon?
No, I mean, fortunately, Todd, I've always just loved what I do, and we were having fun. I mean, yes, any business has its challenges, right? If you remember, right, 2001, horrible time for the industry. 9/11 happened. Businesses were, really hurting. But for us, it was actually a good time, right? Digital helped transform hotels, and 9/11 actually, helped that process along, because hotels needed that help because of what had happened. So yeah, I think the usual struggles of, running a business, but I think we were still growing. We were still expanding into new markets, internationally. So I don't think there was any time where we were, oh my gosh, this is horrible, I need to get out, let's take the first offer that comes. So that's why it was so difficult, honestly, Todd. We were making great money. We were doing really good things. My philosophy was always take care of the customer, take care of the employee, and the money will come, right? And but we got approached, and honestly, the offer was too good to pass up.
And so let me ask about that. The offer was too good. Was it because of the size of the money offered, or because of the platform? Because you sold to Sabre. Mm-hmm. Is it because of the platform that you could plug into and all the additional resources, or was it a combination of all that?
Yeah, it was a combination. I think when we were approached, the money was one thing, and it would have, for me, it was going to take care of me and my family, and we wouldn't have to do work anymore, right? But it was also the ability to grow globally, right? We were doing some things globally, but when you're a smaller company, you just don't have the resources to be able to work in every continent in the world, right? Sabre brought that, right? They were a large company at the time. They were privately held by private equity, but $4 billion company at the time. And I think what was exciting, Todd, was that they said, listen, we're not only going to make you and your partner whole, if you will, in terms of the transaction, but we want you to stay, right? We're not going to have you come in and then get rid of you in a couple of months, right? We want your expertise. Sabre at the time had great, expertise with airlines, with car rental companies, and they worked with hotels in their distribution system, but they didn't have a lot of people that were hotel executives or hospitality executives. So that was part of the interest for us as owners.
And how did they then? So first of all, you got these inbound. Did you hire somebody, a banker or a lawyer or somebody like that, to help you manage that?
We hired a lawyer. Yeah, we didn't go out on a pitch and all this kind of stuff. We hired a lawyer to help us with the transaction. People that were very well versed in these kinds of things.
Sure.
Look, I don't know if we left any money on the table. I thought it was a really good offer, and the fact that they were going to bring us in, and then
it was unique, right?
Very unique to keep all of us, right? And actually, what happened, Todd, was very shortly thereafter, the chairman of the company said, "Hey, Felix, we want to create a new company within Sabre." So at the time, Sabre had, Sabre, they had Travelocity, and they had Sabre Airline Solutions. So they wanted to create a division or a new entity called Sabre Hospitality Solutions. And so I was tapped to lead that. So I was the first or founding president of Sabre Hospitality Solutions. And, that was exciting because it was almost like a new startup all over within a larger
with
entity.
All the resources, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
But that came about after deal close. You didn't, that was not the reason, right? From that standpoint. If we can talk about structure for a second, was it all cash? We're just buying you, or did they want you to have stock, or did you need to earn out over a period of time?
It was mostly cash. There was an earn out. And then as part of the deal, the founders got stock.
Okay.
Again, it was private equity still, so it was private stock.
So, and we've got a couple deals going on now with younger sellers, like in their 40s, let's say. And so one of the questions is always, I'm going to have a non-compete. Mm-hmm. And everybody's completely comfortable with a non-solicit. Like I'm not going to go after my customers or any of that kind of stuff. But geez, if this doesn't work out, this is all I know, right? How did you manage it how did you think about that? And how did you manage it in the transaction?
Well, that was a great question, Todd. And that's why the lawyers that we hired really helped us with that part, because that was a part that we were definitely negotiating. I had been in the hotel business since I was 12. If I get, if I can't work in the hotel business, I'm done, right? Yeah. So we made sure that the clause in terms of the non-compete was that I could still work in the industry, right? As long as it wasn't exactly what Sabre was doing, and what I was doing before, then I could still work, advise. There are lots of other areas that I could have worked in the hotel business. So I still was able to work in that business, in that industry.
And do you remember how long the non-compete was?
5 years.
Yeah. 4 or 5 years is market rate, right? And so people get freaked out about that because I can't compete and all this. And where good lawyers are really helpful is they'll shrink it down to this area over that 5-year period.
Exactly.
It sounds like you were happy with your law firm. Can you say who it was?
Sure. Venable. They're originally a Baltimore based, but they have offices all over the country. My wife had worked for that firm before, and her dad had worked for that firm. And so I felt comfortable. I knew the folks there, and they were great.
Excellent. So you had a good experience, probably a great experience transitioning now to Sabre. You're an entrepreneur in a large organization, in the entrepreneurial department of that large organization. And you stayed there for how long?
6 years. Yeah.
And they sold, you didn't like it anymore. You wanted different challenges?
No, it's funny. I things were going great. The business that we had started was going great. And we were growing, significantly. You know what, Todd? I turned a certain age. I was turning 50. My kids were about to go to college. And look, Sabre was great with me. I had an incredible opportunity. I did things that I never thought I would do. But I'm still an entrepreneur at heart. And I was feeling the wanting to go back to sort of the starting things, right? My career has been spent on starting things or fixing things that are broken. And I felt like I'd done what I needed to do there. And so it was kind of time for me to leave. And the funny thing is, the nice thing is that I went to my boss, and who was the CEO of all of Sabre. And I said, hey, Tom, listen, I've enjoyed my run here. This has been great. But I need to tell you that I want to, because of what's going on in my life, et cetera, I want to, I'm going to leave. But I want to make sure that we do this seamlessly. So I want to give you as much time as, you think we need. And he says, okay, how about if you give me 2 years?
2 years?
So I laughed and I go, wait, Tom, normally it's like 2 weeks, right? Or a month or something like that. He goes, well, listen, I think this is fine to say now, right? We're thinking of going public at some point in the future, and we would like to have you stick around for that process, right? Because it's a pretty heavy duty process.
Yeah.
And I said, wow, okay, well, listen, why don't we do this? I said, let's see if we can find a replacement for me. We won't tell anybody that we've had this conversation, so nobody else knows what I'm thinking. And then I'll give you as much time as we both need. So we hired a person that we brought on as COO of the company. And I left 15 months later. So I gave 15 months notice.
I tell people all the time is that oftentimes if you act like an adult, you'll be treated like an adult, right? And so I'm glad to hear that is bore out there.
Yeah.
Now, and to put it in perspective,
what I'll say to add to that is, yes, I took a risk in having that conversation, but I knew that if he had said, hey, listen, get the heck out, right? We don't want somebody that is sort of, halfway
committed.
Or he knew the kind of work I'd done. We had a really good relationship. And I felt comfortable that whatever decision he made was going to be okay, right? And I think it was great. Everybody benefited, I think, from that transition. The person I brought on board had a year, 15 months to figure out the new job. And it was a nice, smooth transition. And the good news, Todd, about that is that I always tell my kids this. It's as important how you leave a business as how you start a business.
That's great advice. Let's go to wrap up the concept on the non-compete. So people may not know this. You have a non-compete that's tied to the transaction. And then you have a non-compete tied to your employment agreement. Right. A lot of conversation about how enforceable employment agreement non-competes are. Right. But you were past your 5 years now.
Correct.
Right? Did that weigh into your decision making at all?
Not really. I had, mainly for me, it was one of these things where I just knew that I felt I had done what I needed to do in that business to start it, to get it to a point where it was running, smoothly and we were growing, that I was like, I'll figure something else out. And honestly, Todd, I didn't, and I told my boss, I said, it's not like I have another job in mind. It's not like I have something in particular. I just want to be able to open up the possibilities. I'm going to take a little bit of time off and then see what happens.
That's a great segue, because this is what I'd like to spend the rest of our time talking about. So I've got a gentleman now, Ab is his name, who has been building his business for a long time. He's 50 and like everybody I work with is concerned about, okay, if I'm going to do this transaction and then I'm going to transition and be part of the, working for a second bite with this group. What if it doesn't work out? Number one. But more importantly, I'm 50. I'm not going to go build an agency again. I'm not going to do this again. Number one, what advice or commentary would you offer to that individual? Number two, what was the experience like now that, because I often use the reference, you're a made man, right? You built something from scratch, you sold it to private equity or a large strategic, and there's a stamp on you that is very valuable in the world. What was your experience like?
So my experience was, I left and I'm thinking, okay, now what? Right. And so I had one thing in mind. I was, I consider myself a triathlete, and I had done some shorter triathlons before that, but I had said, when I'm leaving, I'm going to go for a bigger one. So I planned on training for a full Ironman. And so that took a lot of time. And so that took up a lot of my time and energy that sort of year after I left. And then I thought, okay, what's next? Right. And what happened was the universe started opening up things to me, right? People found out that I was no longer there. And because I had a pretty good background, right, being in the industry, starting businesses, working for larger companies, people approached me. Literally the first few months after I left, I was approached by KKR, and that's my relationship with Tom Uger, on helping them with a transaction. They were looking at acquiring a large company in the hotel space, and they wanted my help. And so I was with them through that process. That was interesting. It was a big transaction. It was fun kind of dealing with private equity.
I'm sorry, Felix.
Yeah.
So first of all, Tom from PPC, which is a very successful private equity group, introduced us, number one. He reached out to you and you helped him with that process. Can you define that a little bit more, like how that came about and what the process that you helped with was?
Sure. So they were looking at acquiring a company, a hotel technology company in the hospitality space. And they felt that they had all the people that they needed in terms of, crunching the numbers, looking at the business, was it going to grow, et cetera, et cetera. But they didn't have anyone like at a really high level hotel executive or someone that had worked in a technology company dealing with hotels to be able to look under the hood a little bit more, to go through the due diligence. So I was in the due diligence process. I was in the meetings, interviewing the other company CEO and, looking at all the paperwork. And so I was able to give them my thoughts, right, on, is this business going to fly? What's the growth potential? Where are the red flags? Where are the skeletons buried? That kind of thing. So that was an exciting process because, basically they just picked my brain, right, about that business. And I knew that business from my other, from working at Sabre.
Sure, probably better than anyone else, which is what private equity is great at, right? Finding the intellectual property that can, or the intelligence that will help them make those decisions.
Yeah. Maybe not better than anybody else, but more than any of those guys, right? Because they're not in that space every day.
Yeah. Great. And so you worked on that. They acquired that business, and then
we ended up. They didn't end up getting it. They lost. It was a bid. They bid. I think it was $915 million, and they lost by $10 million. So somebody else bought.
They lost by $10 million.
Yeah, that's what I understand. But the good news is, I had established a connection, right, with somebody. And that's when a few years later, he approached me about, becoming executive chairman of some of the other businesses he had after he had gone over to PPC, because before he was at KKR. So, after the sale, and for me, in addition to sort of doing some advising, right, I ended up, there was a person that I knew in the local Bethesda community that had an IT support company, like an IT services company, had nothing to do with hotels, right? But he said, hey, I know you, I've heard you've had a transaction. Sounds like you know what you're doing. Would you mind talking to me about my business?
He reached out to you.
He reached out to me, yes. We had mutual friends. And so I looked at his business and I said, yeah, I could definitely help you here. I can see right away where you need to, make some changes. And so he said, well, would you be interested in, partnering up with me? And I said, well, sure, but I'd have to make an investment and whatever. And so I did. I made an investment in the business. I I owned 50% of it. And I said, I have to be the chairman because one of the things I do appreciate is I know when I'm in charge of something, I usually make money. Not to be arrogant, but that's usually the way it works out. And so I said, I'll do this on one condition, if I can be the chairman, final decision maker. But look, I'll invest and I'll put some time into it. And you know what? That business with some of the things, we changed some things and he was open to them. We turned that business around. And later I sold it and made some more money, right?
And what was that business?
It was an IT services company. So it was basically helping businesses with their IT infrastructure, right?
Like IT support kind of services.
Exactly, yeah.
And then you sold that business, the two of you guys sold that business to private equity or a larger group?
Well, we were approached by private equity, but the original founder wanted to keep it. And so I said, listen, it's time for me to move on. So he bought me out.
Did you go back to Venable to help you with that?
No, I actually used another smaller firm because this was
right. Venable's a pretty big shop.
Transaction. So yeah, I had another local attorney, Doug.
So tell me then, because I always find this interesting, and I talk to guys about it a lot, but this is, as I said, a live example of that. So I know, Tom at PPC and you guys are working on some things now. How did that come about? And can you define a little bit what executive chairman means and the responsibilities and how much you like it or don't?
Sure. So Tom approached me a few years ago and said, hey, listen, we enjoyed working with you on the other transaction. We have purchased a couple of businesses that are in the hotel technology space. One was based in Germany, one was based in New York. And when we acquired the company, we thought that the founder of one of the companies was going to be the person that we were going to rely on to put the two businesses together and then to continue to grow and to look at new M&A. I think what happened was shortly thereafter they made the transaction, they realized that person was probably not the person that they wanted to move on with in terms of doing that. He was a good entrepreneur and had done a good job of running the business. But in terms of expanding and looking at other acquisitions and growing significantly, I think they both mutually agreed that wasn't going to be his role. So Tom called me and said, hey, listen, we're looking for someone, and they title it executive chairman. What we mean by that is we want someone to come in, look at the business, and instead of just being, showing up once a quarter to a board meeting and saying you're the chairman, the executive part, right? The quote unquote executive part is we want to see if you can help us figure out how to run this business, right? Better, how to merge the businesses together to get more efficiencies, because that was why they bought them originally, right?
Sure.
And then we want to have a plan to make other acquisitions to grow this business more significantly.
So can I just pause because I don't want to, so I know people envision the conversation with that founder as hostile, angry, take all of his shares, blah, blah. And what I experience is, I'm going to guess that he's rolled forward a bunch of equity. He would really like that bunch of equity to be a much bigger bunch of equity. And if there's somebody smarter that that can do that, let's get him. Was that the experience, and was there hostility when you worked with him?
Well, so he literally he was still part of the board, if you will, of the new entity, but there was no interaction whatsoever. So he was sort of, hey, I'm going to move on. I'll let you guys do what you need to do. Yes, he had to have some sort of say in bigger,
because he was an equity holder. Yeah.
Yeah. But, like if we were going to make an acquisition, and he did have still some equity in the new entity, but yeah, I didn't have any involvement with him other than when I went to the board meetings. And I also said that, I said, look, because I knew him as well in the industry. And I said, if you want me to be effective, I need to be able to make the decisions that I feel are necessary. And I don't want 5 other people telling me what to do. So if you want me to do that, great, let's do it that way. And that's what they did. So I had complete authority, if you will, and autonomy to do what I needed to do, to bring in the team that I needed to bring in to help, realize what they were trying to do.
That's interesting. And so if you think about somebody that is going to do a transaction with the wisdom of having done several of them, what observations would you make or advice would you give about the key technical points or tactical points of a transaction? And what would you say as far as their view of life after a transaction and how they should process that?
Yeah. So I think it's different, Todd, for everyone. In my case, when I was considering the transaction, I thought about a few different things, right? One is what's going to be best for, the stakeholders, right? And in that case, it was me and my, partner, right? In terms of the financials and what was going to happen to us later. Then it was what's going to happen to my employees, right? Because I didn't want to just take the money and walk away, right? I built that business. We hired lots of younger people that were coming out of college, back then. That was sort of who you hired in digital. And I had seen them grow into younger professionals, and I wanted to continue that path, right? And so the transaction for me was which one of these opportunities that we had in front of us is going to help me with my personal financial situation, with my employees' situation, and my customers, right? I wanted to make sure that wherever we were going or whatever we were doing next, that I just didn't leave my customers hanging. I'd grown up working at Ritz-Carlton and Four Seasons, and my, thought process on customer service is we want to do a great job. We want to be the best in the world. And I didn't want to just say, hey, listen, thank you very much. You've helped me be successful, start this business, and you've been a loyal client.
Good luck to you.
Yeah, I'm going to give you to somebody that's going to not take care of you, right? So I wanted to make sure that all those three elements were, thought through and taken care of.
How do I know? That's what I hear from people.
Yeah.
How do I know that they're going to keep all my employees and treat them like they say they will? And any insight there?
I mean, look, no one has a crystal ball, right? But we did our due diligence as well, right? I had been in the business before. I knew of Sabre. I knew the sort of the good, bad, and the ugly. The other company didn't have as good of a reputation from when I talked to customers, when I talked to other people they were in the industry. And then the private equity offer, it was just more about the money and not as much about the ability to grow something much more exciting, right? And so those are the things I considered. I did my homework, I thought, and you know what? At the end of the day, it comes down to I wanted to meet with the CEO of Sabre, and I wanted to meet him face to face. So he flew to Bethesda. They were based in Dallas, and I said, "Listen, this is what I want. Are you gonna? Is that we're gonna do a deal here?" And at the end of the day, it was actually a lot of that was just personal feeling. Looking at somebody in the face and saying, "This is what I want. Is that what you're gonna do?" And then yes, after that, you have to hope that they're true to their word, and they were. They really were. It was a good situation for what I had intended.
And what two-part question, what surprised you most about life after your first transaction? And what do you think you've enjoyed most about life after that first transaction?
I think what surprised me most was that since I didn't know exactly what I was going to do, the surprise was that I had all these different opportunities that I never even thought about. A couple years after I left Sabre, 3 years after I left Sabre, I was called by someone that used to work at Sabre who had founded the world's first AI company for travel. And he said, listen, he goes, I'm an older guy and we need a younger guy to kind of be the CEO and help us raise money and take this thing from, where we are, which is really just nascent, and really make it a company. And I'm thinking, AI, what the heck is AI? This was back in end of 2014, 2015. And I'm thinking, I flew down to Austin, Texas. They were based there. And I talked to small team that they had, and I looked at what they were thinking about in terms of technology, and I was like, this is really cool stuff. Like, this is bleeding edge technology. I want to be involved in that. And so I said to my wife, hey, let's do this. And so, I ended up getting an apartment in Austin and working in Austin for a few years, helping that business. And so I learned, I think what surprised me the most is different opportunities. This other IT services company. I don't know anything about IT services, but I helped that business, a small business, grow, become profitable, and I made a nice chunk of change out of it. I was approached by several smaller startup firms in the hotel technology space that were looking for, like I like to say, someone with a little bit of experience, right? The one company, long story short, the person contacted me because one of the girls I used to coach in my daughter's soccer team was at Penn and met this other girl, and they were starting a new business in the hotel technology space. And she says, oh, my coach is in hotels. Maybe I can put you together. So Todd, we started talking. I became an advisor. And, a few years later, they sold for a bunch of money. And I was part of that journey, So
that's great.
For me, the surprise was the ability to kind of do different things and experience different work challenges. So that was great. The other thing was just the ability to have flexibility, because the sale gave me a certain, financial situation, I could pick and choose what I wanted to do. And that was something, really nice, right, that I was able to do.
Last question, and then I'll let you run, or two more. You've always attracted inbound interest, right? Never kind of gone through a process. When you look back, is there a consistent thing you have done to make you attractive to somebody from the outside, something consistent with those businesses?
I mean, not strategically, right? I think all I've done is I feel like I've worked really hard. If I say I'm going to do something, I do it. I think the results of those businesses speak for themselves, right? I've been very fortunate that whenever I've worked somewhere, the results have been good, right? And honestly, Todd, that's really for me about the people that I surround myself with. I mean, I think if anything, I have been able to be really good at finding good talent. And I surround myself with people that are smarter than me, and that know more about certain things than I do. I have, as my wife jokes, she says, you've been the CEO of technology companies for 25 years, but you can't change the timer on the stove, right? And, if you put a gun to my head, I could not program, I couldn't write code. But I've learned how to manage people that do that. I've learned how to find the right talent. And then we've created some great teams. We've had some great results. And I think great results. And then also, I think the other thing I have is, I think I have good integrity with people, and I think in working with customers and other employees. And so when I've gone out and done other things, people will call me because maybe they had a good experience with me before. And I think that's where I've been fortunate.
Yep. It's great to know that still counts for a lot.
Yeah.
Is there one or more than one experience or book that you read or mentor person in your history that you think accounted for an outsized percentage of your success that you would recognize?
I think probably a few. I mean, I would say my first sort of big boss was a man named Horst Schulze, and he was the president of Ritz-Carlton Hotel. So, I'm kind of fresh out of Cornell's hotel school, and I'm, looking to grow my career. And here's this guy with a German accent telling us about, ladies and gentlemen, serving ladies and gentlemen. And his philosophy was always, take care of the customer, really make sure that you exceed their expectations. And then everything else after that is going to be easy, right? You'll be able to make money. You'll be able to have a good business if you take really good care of the customer. Jack Welch, had a book that I read probably early in my career that talked about, three things: customer satisfaction, employee satisfaction, and you need to make money, right? In a business. I mean, that's pretty simple, but every single business, whether it's been a smaller one or a larger one, if you do those things, things are going to...
Good things will happen. My last question to you is, did you complete the Ironman and did you get the tattoo?
So one of my greatest thrills is that last October, I completed the Ironman World Championships in Kona.
Wow. It was the big one.
The big one, yeah. And I have not gotten a tattoo yet.
Okay. You put it on the back of your calf from what I understand. So
no, I'm going to put it somewhere else.
All right. Well, that is as much of an accomplishment, perhaps even more than the other things. And it's always just enlightening and special when somebody with the experience that you have will come on and share openly and thoughtfully. And it's been a great episode, Felix. So I just really want to say thanks and for spending the time and giving as much as you have. Thank you.
Todd, thanks a lot. Good to catch up with you today.
And I would assume for all those listening, Felix Laboy, I know you're on LinkedIn. Your contact, your link to LinkedIn will be on the show notes and things like that. So if somebody wants to track you down from that with interesting opportunities, they certainly can. Felix, thanks again. It's great to have you.
Thanks. Have a good day.
Thanks for listening to the Second Bite podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.